An investigation by Israeli media group Haaretz has revealed the role of the Israeli government in the controversial transfer of Palestinians from Gaza to other countries. It says the little-known group Al-Majd Europe was operating in close coordination with Kogat, a branch of the Israeli army. The operation came to light with the arrival of a chartered plane in Johannesburg on Thursday. It was carrying 153 Palestinians from Gaza. Zain Basravi has more.
There is still no verified information about the organization that arranged the transfer of dozens of Palestinians from Gaza to South Africa. The 153 passengers were kept on board a chartered plane for 12 hours at Johannesburg's International Airport after landing on Thursday. No food, no water, no proper ventilation, because they did not have the required Israeli exit stamps in their passports. None of them applied for asylum upon arrival. Authorities eventually allowed them to enter on a 90-day visitor visa. About 130 stayed in South Africa. The rest continued on to their destinations.
This is not at all a random event. This is very much part of a long colonial pattern, a very systematic dispossession of indigenous Palestinians that has been perpetuated by Zionist Israelis. And they want to empty the land from its indigenous people. Using multifaceted approaches.
This is the website of the organization that reportedly coordinated their departure. It lists an address in Sheikh Jarrah in occupied East Jerusalem. This is the area the site refers to, but there is no visible signage or identifiable office at that location. Al Jazeera has reviewed a WhatsApp conversation between a Palestinian man, we are calling him Ibrahim to protect his identity, and someone calling himself Omar, claiming to represent Al-Majd Europe. On August the 10th, Ibrahim asks for an update on his application to leave Gaza. Nearly 2 months later, on October the 4th, a reply asking for passport details, birth certificates, and payment. Quote, "The amount is $2,500 per person, whether adult or child. I should clarify that this is only a symbolic amount and does not cover actual full costs. Are you ready to make the payment?" Ibrahim's request for himself and his family was ultimately denied. But the fact remains, an unregistered organization was able to move Palestinians out of Gaza via Israel and onto a private chartered plane. South Africa's government says it is investigating how. While major questions remain about who organized the trip, some of those who arrived in South Africa say they will seek asylum. For now, staying safe is their main priority. Zain Basravi, Al Jazeera.
As we mentioned earlier, Israeli news outlet Haaretz has carried out an investigation into the company that organises the departures from Gaza. They say Al-Majd Europe was approved by Israel's Voluntary Emigration Bureau. The bureau works in close cooperation with Israel's Defence Ministry and was established to ease security requirements for Palestinians leaving Gaza. We're going to speak to Nour Odeh now. She joins us from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. And Nour, can you just run us through a few more of the details that we're getting from this Haaretz investigation, first of all?
Well, Tom, the Haaretz investigation reached the same conclusions about Al-Majd Europe that we have been reporting for a few days. It's a phony company. The address it provides in occupied East Jerusalem is false. It doesn't have registration in Germany as it claimed. Now, the new component revealed by Haaretz is its connection to another shady individual, a dual Estonian-Israeli citizen named Tomer Janar Lind. Now, this man is linked to several phony companies as well, some listed in London, others in Dubai and so on, but all having either wrong numbers or numbers that don't answer and no registration and so on. Now, this man spoke to Haaretz and he confirmed that he is facilitating the one-way exit of families out of Gaza in coordination with the Israeli army. but he declined to give out more information. The Israeli army, as we have been telling our viewers since the beginning of the year, has established a unit, a department run by the Vice Director General of the Ministry of Defense in charge of so-called voluntary migration of Palestinians out of Gaza. And what that unit does is basically facilitate the exit of any Palestinian wishing to leave Gaza. As far as they're concerned, that means they will not return. This is, of course, not the intended target of Palestinians wishing to leave for education, for medical treatment, or like those families who ended up in Johannesburg. They had no idea where they were going to be. They just wanted to be out of Gaza, some of them having visas to other third countries. The details revealed in the investigation, Tom, don't all add up. The Israeli military claims that they saw proper documentation and they saw visas to South Africa. South Africa, as we know, does not require visas for holders of Palestinian passports. Now, we also know from those who were on board the plane that when they got to Kenya, which was their first destination, they didn't go through passport control. They were simply ushered into another charter plane that took them to Johannesburg. So this really brings the details full circle, and the connection between this shadowy company, Al-Majd, and the Israeli military, the Israeli government, and its declared policy of pushing out the Palestinians from Gaza comes full circle with this investigation.
Right, Nour. Can you just give us an idea of how this is all linked to part of a wider strategy from many within Israel of I guess, trying to forcibly displace Palestinians, not just within Gaza, but now outside of the Strip, and part of this wider strategy potentially of ethnic cleansing?
That's right, Tom. This is declared policy of the Israeli government, encouraged at the beginning of this year when U.S. President Donald Trump talked about taking out the population, considering Gaza a demolition site, and sending the population somewhere else where they can restart their lives. Now, the Israeli government picked up on that and immediately adopted this as policy, official policy that is, because it was the undeclared policy, and created a unit within the Israeli army. The U.S. president has since walked back those comments and has not spoken again of ethnically cleansing Gaza. In fact, the Trump plan contains the exact opposite, at least in the text, a guarantee that anybody wanting to leave Gaza would be guaranteed the right to return home. But this right-wing government in Israel, the composition of it, the ideological leanings of its key ministers is committed to just that, making sure that as many Palestinians leave as possible, not just in Gaza, but also in the occupied West Bank. And just as recently as in the past 24 hours, Tom, we heard from Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Minister of National Security, saying that the only solution is to encourage voluntary migration. That is code for ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. Smotrich, the Minister of Finance, also said something similar in the past 24 hours, all in response to concerted efforts at the UN Security Council to adopt the Trump plan, to put in place implementation for further withdrawals of the Israeli army, ending the possibility of complete ethnic cleansing of Gaza, at least in the eyes of the right wing in Israel, which was committed not just to kicking out the Palestinians, but establishing settlements in their stead.
Thank you so much, Nour Odeh, for us there in Ramallah. Well, joining us from Johannesburg now is Ashraf Essop. He's a South African immigration lawyer and a director at the law firm Rousseau's. Thank you so much for being with us here on Al Jazeera, sir. First of all, I understand that you have seen that Haaretz investigation. Can you just give us your thoughts on what you make of basically this group, this Al-Majd Europe group, being directly linked to the Israeli Defense Ministry?
I've just seen the report and I haven't been able to digest any of that, but I take it that it's correct because I think there's more than one source speaking of the same kind of modus operandi.
Right. OK, turning to South Africa now and what South African authorities might have known about this flight. I mean, can you just give us an idea? How could any of this have occurred without South African approval?
So there is one possibility, and that is that the airline was not completely candid with the South African authorities. In the normal course, the airlines will have to have an advance passenger manifest sent to the Department of Home Affairs. Now, the Department of Home Affairs just looks for people that may, have had previous convictions of trying to enter South Africa, or may be prohibited on some international list, or prohibited in terms of our immigration laws. In this case, we don't know what had happened. We don't know, because this was a charter flight. The local airlines, did they have a special agreement to enter or to take this group as tourists? We don't know any of those things, and that has to be investigated. So I think very clearly the South African government and the Department of Home Affairs, especially border management, was caught unawares.
Right. Why do you think that they end up landing in South Africa? I mean, it's had a very vocal stance when it comes to the ICJ on Israel's actions in Gaza. So is the arrival of a plane full of Palestinians without, these entry or exit stamps, is that just a coincidence or something more, do you think?
Well, there was a previous flight last week on the 28th of October, and that went off without any incident. They were admitted into South Africa in terms of the immigration legislation and given a 30-day visa to remain in the country. No one spoke of an asylum or refugee seeking permit at that stage. And indeed, they were hosted by the local community when they found out that the so-called tour operator made no arrangements for them to be hosted in the Republic. So Johannesburg is a big city, and people with families were sent to various parts. And then they found themselves wanting and lacking. They don't even speak English, many of them. And so civil society movements stepped in to try and assist. That is how the matter became unraveled.
Understood. Well, what responsibilities, legal or humanitarian, do third countries like South Africa have when they become part of an evacuation route such as this one?
South Africa has got the most generous asylum-seeking process in the world. It's absolutely user-friendly. You could pitch up at the airport as a visitor, and you could then apply for asylum there and then. And our laws are so generous that the immigration officer is bound to give you an asylum transit visa valid for 5 days. Even if you don't make it there and you ask for asylum later on, you are accommodated if you can show good cause. So good cause means that you came to a port of entry, or indeed even had entered illegally. Let's say you didn't have a so-called entry or exit stamp, which we'll come to shortly. You could enter the country and then ask for good cause and then make your way to a refugee reception office. South Africa is famous for its treatment of refugees. They're not camped. They're allowed to open businesses. They're entitled to marry. They have absolute freedom. And they're treated exactly the same as everyone else in terms of our constitution, which is very, very generous when it comes to the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is the cornerstone of democracy. It contains a number of rights. Amongst the rights therein is the right to dignity. A right to dignity and human rights is interwoven in the Immigration Act. So you could see that no one is discriminated against simply because they're coming into asylum or as an asylum or a visitor and wanting to stay.
OK. Well, what do you think is going to happen to them now if they do decide to stay in South Africa? It sounds like they're going to be very well looked after.
There are two avenues that they could possibly look at. One, they could leave after the 90-day visitor's visa has been granted. In that regard, let me be very clear. The Minister of Home Affairs was very, very generous and fair. He gave them the full entitlement of a visitor's visa, and they can stay for 90 days. And he said it's on humanitarian grounds, but you could see that he's gone out of his way to accommodate this group of people. So in 90 days, they could decide what they're going to do. They're going to stay. They can ask if they have the critical skills, they can ask to stay on and contribute to the workforce by critical skills, asking the minister. if they can waive the requirement that they go back. Alternatively, they can, if they wish, find themselves applying for refugees asylum status. In fact, there's a very interesting debate. Even if you came in as a visitor and suddenly your conditions change, such as that you can't go back or you don't have the means, then you can apply for refugee through place. And this is a matter now under a judgment of our Constitutional Court with the judgment pending.
Okay, we'll leave it there. But thank you so much for explaining so much of potentially what could happen in the months ahead for many of these people. That is Ashraf Essop there for us out of Johannesburg. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.